infinite stories for film and television. Infinite stories. Infinite stories. I hope you're a little bit intrigued by this label, by this title. I hope that's why you're here. And of course, that was my intention, to attract you to the talk with an intriguing title. What do I mean by it? Well, overall, I mean the ability of machines, of computers, to automatically tell stories. Of course, that still sounds as something of the science fiction realm, but it is soon moving towards reality. And that's what I want to present to you in my talk today. Of course, that is a large landscape. So this year, I'm going to take chapter 1 and talk about interactive storytelling. So a better title would have been One Story, an Infinity of Tellings. What does this mean? Well, again, the ability of new media, of new computing technologies to tweak stories and adapt them for each and every one of us. Even more, for each and every possible viewing. Why, you might ask? Well, to give us maximum joy, to increase our engagement with it. For instance, by keeping us closer to our favorite characters and presenting the nail-biting moments of suspense from their perspective. Or to give us more flexible ways of watching. For instance, by shrinking or extending the length of an episode according to how long we have available to watch. Or to allow stories to expand their tentacles on various devices. For example, we can imagine having conversations with our favorite characters on smart speakers during, after, before we watch a story. And even more, to allow us to intervene in stories. For example, by instructing characters on what to do next. So what I am talking about is personalized stories to us and stories in which we can have agency. You probably saw or heard of Netflix's Bandersnatch, released in December 2018. Bandersnatch is an example, a great example of what I'm referring to. However, despite being an inspiring and motivating and powerful example, as an instance, it did not offer too much that could be generalized and applied to other future productions. Well, that's at least according to what has been published, as Netflix might have held some of their lessons and innovations to themselves. But anyway, in the public domain, there's no general recipe. There is one instance, and that is all. So its impact upon creative practice was limited from this perspective. What I am presenting to you here refers to storytelling forms similar to Bandersnatch, but more comprehensive, more ambitious. To realize them, we developed a new way of thinking, accompanied by dedicated production technology, which fosters more ambitious creative thought and allows it to be quickly materialized in productions. This provision is generic and can be used across productions and genres, so it is reusable. Through this, we believe we can have a significant impact upon the creative practice concerning interactive storytelling. If you have not seen Bandersnatch, not to worry, or not heard of, think of choose your adventure books. Choose your own adventure books. God, it took me a while to get this right. My talk is about making similar stories, but embodied in recorded video and audio, and far, far more ambitious in terms of the interaction forms that they provide. In this talk, I will show you that stories told through video and audio, such as film and television, don't need anymore to be fixed in a linear form and watched from the beginning to the end in sequence. Instead, we can have story worlds which we, the viewers, can explore as we wish, and in which we, the viewers, can have an impact upon the unfolding events. Interestingly, although this is a form of the future, it is akin to the oldest narrative forms, such as oral storytelling and acting, in which the storytellers are able to adapt their stories in response to the cues from the audience or to the places in which they deliver them. However, what we are proposing is done through a medium, and this is where the huge complexity lies. To put things in perspective, over the past 10,000 years, media forced stories to be linear. Only recently, technologies allowed us to imagine breaking this constraint. So you'd ask, why would we need such a form? Is it not enough what we already have? Well, first, yes, that's a good question, but there is clear evidence that viewers, particularly the younger ones, require interaction in all the media they consume. And secondly, and that's even more important for me, because we can imagine it. It seems possible, and we are curious to find out, is it really? Can we create instances of this form which appeal to the public? How far can we go with them? But let me first introduce myself, and then I'll start the story proper. I am Marian Ursu. I'm a professor of interactive media in the Department of Theatre, Film, Television, and Interactive Media at the University of York. I'm the director of the Digital Creativity Labs, a great research center, of course I say that now, but it really is, in which we create new ways of interacting with and through digital media, as well as new digital technologies that facilitate such forms of interaction and artistic expression. They go hand in hand, and neither can be truly explored without considering the other one, that is, technology development and forms of interaction. You want to say something in media in a particular way, you realize that the technology is not quite there, and you need to build new technological components to facilitate that expression. Of course, as soon as you have it, you realize that there is far more than you can actually say than you initially intended. Mutual determination, a spiral that grows and grows and grows. And that is the ethos of Digital Creativity Labs, to blend technology innovation with innovation in form of expression and interaction. Our research into interactive and personalized storytelling also followed this pattern, obviously. We had to build dedicated tools and technologies to be able to produce the stories we wanted. Once we had them, we understood that we could aim higher, and so on. So let me recap the main question that drove our research and then start the journey. Can we make personalized film and television programs which are able to adapt themselves to viewers and viewing conditions, and also respond to viewer interaction? We answered this question with a clear yes, and provided as evidence the new technology we created, which we call object-based media. Before sketching the answer, however, I need to make sure that every member of the audience has the basic understanding of filmmaking, which is necessary for the understanding of the new approach. Please do bear with me if you already know it, and probably most of you do, as I only have a couple of slides for it, but let me do this, as I can't ask questions to the audience and I can't see your reactions. In linear filmmaking, the content is produced by filming in location or in studios. All this material, once produced, it's called the footage in filmmaking jargon. The media clips are made then available for editing, are put into editing. It is here that the film takes shape, essentially by selecting the right and the best shots and arranging them in the sequence that best conveys the story. Of course, this is a simplified view of editing, but that is sufficient. This process is carried out by skilled editors and leads to the final shape of the film, the final cut. Once everybody's happy with it, the director, the editors are happy with it, this is locked and the movie is completed. The story is there. It then goes into distribution. Now, whatever the means of distribution, it could be cinema, but if we're talking a home environment, it could be broadcast on TV or streamed on TV or other devices. The experience of the viewers is more or less the same. Everyone sees exactly the same content, the final cut each time they watch it. Now, the question is, how do these two processes, editing and distribution, need to change in order to allow for viewer interaction as well as personalized content delivery? Well, there it is, the storytelling machine. Now, for the type of storytelling in which the narration can change shape in each particular viewing, that is for true flexibility, the clips can't be locked anymore into an immutable final cut before the film is experienced. Editing ought to be done at the time of watching. Therefore, this process must be automatic. Obviously, we cannot have editing teams for each individual person watching. Therefore, it should be the machine, the computer, that creates a personalized final cut for each particular viewing. The distribution platform for such ways of storytelling should also support a back channel through which the storytelling machine is informed about each particular context of viewing. So a route back into the storytelling machine. Each time a viewer engages with the interactive film, the storytelling machine will monitor the circumstances of watching, time of day, available time to watch, type of screen, related content seen so far, etc., as well as the direct choices expressed by the viewer, and will produce the cut that best responds to them. On what basis, might you ask? How does the machine know how to do the edit? What kind of magic can the machine do? Well, this information, the recipe of how various story threads are to be put together, has to be conveyed by those producing the film to the machine. This recipe, we also call it story logic, has to be written into the storytelling machine. Arriving at such a story logic, developing it for each film, and expressing it in a form that could be understood by machines is still such a hard problem to solve that only very few production teams manage to do it reasonably well so far, and with a lot of effort. Bandersnatch is one such example, but they did it in a rather rudimentary manner, which I'll describe later. Our approach is different, of course. I will tell you more about it too. So why, again, you might ask, is this extraction of a story recipe and expression in a computerized form such a difficult problem? Well, the answer is twofold. On one hand, because complex behavior, complex interaction seems impossible to tame, that is, to refine into story logics and to express them appropriately in a computer understandable form. It is hard enough for authors to put a linear movie together, let alone a movie with an infinity of possibilities of watching. On the other hand, very much the reverse of what I said before, is that what is possible to refine and implement in most cases leads to unsatisfactory, simplistic experiences for the viewers, when interactions appears as forced rather than being an intrinsic necessary part of the storytelling. To date, the dominant approach to authoring story logics is labeled as branching narratives. And let me give you a flavor of what that is. Branching narratives essentially works with yes-no binary choices and all the possible combinations, all the possible threads in the story ought to be explicitly represented in a forking structure like the one showed here, which quickly grows out of control, because from each point you can go in 2 or other 3, and then from the next one in 2 and 3, and so on and so forth. And this leads to a phenomenon that is denoted by the term combinatorial explosion, that you could go, each element can be combined with any other element. Let's not go into that mathematical detail. You might know from unfortunately, you will know from the reports on COVID, the term exponential growth. That is another way of describing how fast this structure grows, as the number here that for COVID we wanted to have below 1 is at least 2. So you can imagine how quickly things go out of hand. Anyway, this is the way in which, for example, Bandersnatch has been authored, and Charlie Brooker has been quoted to have said that he was very glad to have done it, but never again. By the way, Charlie Brooker, in case you don't know, is the writer of Bandersnatch. So to summarize, the structures, the way of doing things so far is very complicated, very time consuming, and very error prone. What we did at Digital Creativity Labs in collaboration with BBC R&D, we have created a new way of thinking, which we call object-based media. Really, I want to stress this, a new way of thinking, and more importantly, a new set of authoring tools and technologies, which we claim simplify the authoring process whilst allowing for more complex interactive narrative structures to be implemented, thus leading to more refined and rewarding active viewing experiences. Of course, it is a claim that we could sustain through evidence, but it's just a drop in the ocean still, and we hope that we will develop soon far more persuasive tools and productions. So here are a key differentiating factors between our approach and branching narratives. In branching narratives, all the possible connections between the clips, the media clips, the building blocks of the film are to be stated explicitly, and therefore the number of branches grows and grows and grows. In object-based media, we separate narrative structures or story logic from the content or the media objects themselves. In branching narratives, the sole element of representation is the conditional connection, leading to two-dimensional structures, like the one displayed here. So from each point, you could go into 2 or 3 other places. In object-based media, we have developed dedicated narrative structures, a set of, which allow us to build multi-dimensional representation spaces, so much, much richer. In branching narratives, authoring is complicated, time-consuming, and error-prone. I already said that. In object-based media, it is simpler, more powerful, more effective, and less prone to errors, we claim. Of course, what we actually need to remember, what I said about authors not being able to hold into their heads these complex narrative spaces. It's hard enough for them to author a linear film, let alone something of a multi-dimensional nature. Well, in order to help them, we have to build dedicated tools. And in DC Labs, we developed Cutting Room, an editing suite for interactive storytelling, which includes all the essential features of the object-based media approach described earlier. Now, with a bit of technical detail, we have 2 versions of the Cutting Room. Version 1 was a web-based tool and was usable in any internet browser, and it was therefore very easy to deploy to users, but not as flexible in its uses as we intended due to the underlying technology. For those who may have this knowledge, it was implemented in HTML5 and JavaScript. However, although it lacked some of the flexibility, we were able to use it to realize a few persuasive interactive films, the most notable of which is What is Love, which I will present later. Version 2 is now implemented in the game engine Unity. Again, for those who know, this is the programming language C#, and can be used as a standalone tool. It has the right level of versatility and flexibility as we intended, and is currently undertaking systematic testing before we release it widely to the general public. So if you're interested, do write to us, to me, to us, and we'll let you know when and how it will be distributed, as we would very much like to encourage you to use it if you want to make interactive films, that is. Now, here's a slide that should not scare you. And I'm not going to explain what's there, but it is just an illustrator. So what I want to say about Cutting Room, the essential functionality that Cutting Room provides, is that it's able to support the definition of narrative structures inside narrative structures, inside narrative structures, and so on and so forth to any level of depth. For instance, you see here that black dot on the top left, and that is expanded into something bigger, and again another black dot that is expanding to the right into another thing, and so on and so forth. You see this level of growth, or if you want, packaging. So this feature allows very complex narrative worlds to be divided into smaller, more manageable narrative structures, which in turn could be factored out into smaller structures, and so on and so forth, making this a more effective way of thinking. Now, this is not necessarily that of an innovation, although it's not been done before, but it hasn't been done before because it requires very complex technology under the bonnet, and that is where our innovation lies. So I'm going to continue now with, so that's about technology, and I'm going to stop here. And I'm going to move into presenting you a couple of productions that we've put together. The first one is What is Love? And it was presented to the general public at York Mediale in October 2018. To note, 3 months before Netflix's Bandersnatch. It is a 20-minute interactive film. We worked together with a production company called Symbolism Media, and for this particular project, we invested £20,000 in the making, so a very small budget, partly covered by BBC R&D, partly by DC Labs and the University of York. And according to the festival's evaluation report, this was one of its most successful and watched exhibits. Let me give you a brief description of the story synopsis of What is Love, and then we'll watch a taster. What is Love is the story of a triangular relationship between Amelia, a talented dancer, Jack, her partner and a rising star software developer, and Z, Amelia's own devoted AI butler. Their relationship is witnessed by and intruded upon by Amelia's social network of followers, to which we, the spectators, are made to believe we belong. Amelia and Jack live in separate countries, and worse, in separate time zones, in kind of significantly different time zones. But worst of them all is that they are both very busy and cannot find many occasions to talk directly to each other. So their communication mainly happens through Z. Technologically speaking, Z is a sophisticated combination of Facebook, Zoom, Alexa, and more. Z is like a most trusted friend and messenger for them, but it is also Amelia's secretary in interacting with her rich social network. Amelia sometimes asks Z to keep things away from Jack. Z edits Jack's bouts of anger to reduce their impact upon Amelia. Amelia sometimes asks Z to share too intimate details with her followers. The boundaries between truth and lie, happiness and ignorance, intimacy and exposure are being challenged by this film. Z faces these challenges. Z, of course, as the traditional depiction of machines, a very strong rational entity, but lacking some of the emotional understanding. So the questions that drive the stories, how would AI be able to mediate such situations? And we are drawn into that mediation. Of course, the AI is the veil, as ultimately what is love challenges us, the viewers. Amelia and Jack's relationship is strained by the lack of time for each other and inability to spend moments together. Amelia's preparation for an audition is such a moment. Z finds it increasingly difficult to mediate between them and, more importantly, to keep Amelia shielded from possible upset. At one point, Z's logic dictates a radical decision to cut the real Jack off from Amelia until the audition is done, and until then to enact a digital replica of Jack. I'm going to show you the moment that immediately precedes this decision, and then I will continue with the description of the story. And please be aware that there is some strong language in the following clip. It is 2 minutes and 10 seconds in length, and I'm going to play it now.
That's rubbish. Yeah, I think, man. I have time. I can't have a late one, though. I'll see you in a bit. See, I'm off out for an hour. Yeah, I know, but I won't be long.
I can't sleep. I just watched a rehearsal. You were out of time. Could you even hear the beat? Are we messing around here? Do you want to throw away everything that we've worked for? Amelia, where are you? Are you out? I can't believe you're out. Are you as well? What the hell are you doing? You got fucking insane, Amelia. You better go home right. This is the most important thing in your life. To the side of the fucking world, because what we decided to do, I'm working my fuck. Now you here, you just fuck.
Well, that was a sequence, a clip from the movie, and I perhaps should tell you at this point that it is very hard in short talks like this to demonstrate interactivity. So I've left that intentionally out, but I'm going to be able to talk about it later in our question and answer session. The interaction mechanisms that were offered to the viewing public were versions of social media interaction. One standard, allowing the active viewer to either like or dislike posts by Amelia and her followers. The other one, illustrated here, allows more versatility with regards to the expression of an emotional response to a situation or reaction by Z, and involves a series of emojis varying from loving, happy, to hating or unhappy. And the viewer simply moved their hand across it and chose the right one. In the first part of the story, as the viewers become more familiar with the interaction mechanisms, they don't carry much meaning, the interaction. Nevertheless, later they become more meaningful in influencing the development of the story. Also, initially, the cues for interaction are more explicit, more visible, more in your face, but after a few interactions, they become more discreet. So that's the way we've done the term onboarding for those who are familiar with it. A natural interaction mechanism that we designed was to allow viewers themselves to post messages to Amelia's network. Unfortunately, the budget and production schedule constraints prevented us from including it into the final piece. This would have been a potentially very rich concept, as it could have been used in individual as well as social viewing. At first, interactions from followers would have been staged in the film itself. As you see it here on the screen, this is staged and is part of the movie to incite that type of interaction. But then real communication between the actual viewers would have been expected. This could have happened in an asynchronous model, that is, by viewers watching in their own time the production, but the comments would have accumulated in time and would have become a bank of selection for the artificial intelligence part of the storytelling. But it could have also led to some rewarding experiences for people watching at the same time and kind of establishing a real communication between them during the experience of the film. So What is Love is a film that investigates a love relationship happening through intelligent digital media. And this is a possible trait of our not too distant future, as COVID restrictions have shown recently. Burdened by the intrusive curiosity and interventions of the network of followers, this interactive film explores our society's fascination with and desire for fame and recognition, our hunger for voyeurism, and rush to observe and cast critical judgment over others. The story exposes issues concerning trust, truth, lifestyle, work, choice, ambition, curiosity, and intrusion, and many more. Both ourselves, the producers, as well as some of our critics, concluding that with What is Love, we actually discovered a general format for interactive film, which could be applied to almost any subject that could be raised for public debate. And God, is not everything out there for public debate. By employing social media as an intrinsic part of the story, as well as an interaction mechanism, the number of experiences that could be had on the back of an interactive film are countless. The number of threads through the story are, in my own words, infinite. This conclusion is valid in theory, but pragmatically, could we really have an infinite way of telling a story? An infinity of ways of telling the story. What about the production of the footage? What about possible cacophonic juxtapositions? What about keeping the story in focus and not allowing it to drift towards mere conversations on social media, which is something that already happens? I will not answer them now, but please do ask them, and indeed any other questions in the immediately following session. I'd like now to mention another example of an interactive film made with Cutting Room, Stepping Through. Stepping Through is an interactive film about mental illness. It recounts various experiences, thoughts, and emotions of 5 people with various forms of mental illness. It was made with their participation in all the stages of development, something that is labeled as participatory filmmaking. I'm going to give you a taster illustrating the style of the film and the way in which you, the audience, can make choices. And I should say that this work was led by our doctoral researcher, Simona Mani.
Haven't been seen yet. It's that glance from elsewhere, that moment before the start, grows from a simple seed. Allow yourself to grow and flourish. Interactions which drift in and drift out, floating and sinking, rising and falling.
Carrying that weight on my back can stop the happiness from coming out.
But I aim to try and lift these doubts off my shoulders and my back. A face that cannot be seen. So what does that really mean? The eyes can see what lies ahead.
From the old to the new, hopeful and helpful. Are we all hopeful?
A solo performance, working away to achieve one's own goal, but with a knowledge and a knowing of returning to the hive, that their contribution is added to the collection, no matter how small.
Through interactivity, stepping through is better able to convey the multiple perspective of events or issues and the multiple voices that one could have in recounting their own experience. It discloses aspects about sensitive experiences only to those members of the audience who can be trusted, trust being automatically inferred from the choices made by the viewers. The 5 participants that co-authored it found the form of interactive storytelling more attractive as a means of expression and more powerful as a means of representation. And finally, an interactive documentary made with Cutting Room, a project led by Dr. John Hook, a senior lecturer in the Department of Theatre, Film, Television, and Interactive Media, about care leavers. Over 72,000 children are in the case of a local authority in the UK. Once they reach the age of 18, they are expected to more or less immediately stand their own 2 feet. Brookleaf Home is a documentary about care leavers and their first experiences as independent adults, facing the harsh reality of the real world on rather limited financial support and possibly entirely on their own. Not all local authorities support care leavers in the same way. Brookleaf Home is able to contextualize Brooke's story to the local area in which the film is being watched. It has been found to be able to much better depict the situation regarding care leavers and also as a possibly strong political tool in arguments. So to summarize, I've presented to you our contribution to the development of the interactive storytelling form, an authoring tool, the Cutting Room, and 3 experimental productions made with it. Infinite stories? Not quite. Infinite ways of telling each story? Not quite either, but very much closer. Nevertheless, we've presented and developed more versatile ways of telling stories with recorded video and audio, which we believe will become an established form in the not too distant future. Now that we've invented object-based media and developed prototype production tools, we do trust that we have pushed the whole area a bit forward, and we created a strong foundation for further developments. So hopefully next year, in 2 years' time, we shall see, I should be able to talk about infinite stories, properly respecting the label. And before I close my presentation, here are some acknowledgements that have to be made. Digital Creativity Labs supported this work. Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Councils and the Arts and Humanities Research Councils, together with Innovate UK, we've got some significant government money to do this work. BBC R&D, the Department of Theatre, Film, Television, and Interactive Media, further funding from the University of York, and we've worked very closely in putting the productions and the software together with Symbolism Media and Beta Jesters. And down here, some of the names of those who made this research possible. Thank you very much for your attention and patience for observing me through the whole presentation. I do hope you have questions, and I look forward to answering them in the next session. Bye-bye.